Hey, what's up, friends? Welcome back to Culture Binge. This is the Wisecrack podcast where we really jump up as high as we can to try to touch the ceiling of the cultural zeitgeist and tell you what it felt like. I'm your host, Michael Burns, joined as always by the woman who told me that she's allowed to ruthlessly pick apart anything about me that she wants because she's a critic, Surbhi. And our special guest this week, someone who keeps sending me these long emails about how technically Brexit was all my fault, Wisecrack writer Robyn. How are y'all doing today?
Doing very well. How are you?
Oh, just doing swimmingly. It's a gray day here in Southern California. So for once, I feel like we're weather twins with Robyn and her UK compatriots.
You know what? I was going to complain about the weather today, but as soon as I left work an hour ago, it's suddenly become really sunny. So
Wow.
You're actually like worse than us at the moment. So we win.
Listen, I'm a big fan of late summer, early autumn UK weather. You get a nice day there, it feels magical. So nothing but respect. Now, along with talking about comparisons between weather on different sides of the Atlantic, we have a lot of other stuff to talk about today. So we're going to talk about the kind of changing role of TV criticism and how we talk about TV in the wake of the recent season of Ted Lasso and the first season of The White Lotus. We're also going to talk about how remote learning is changing higher education, particularly for people who might struggle to get into the classroom. But first, I at least want to say hi and introduce Robyn, who's a first timer. So some of y'all might not have, seen or heard Robyn before, but you've read her work. Robyn, what's one of the most recent Wisecrack videos that you wrote?
It was the men's wellness one.
Yeah, which ruled. Not that all of our videos don't rule, but that one in particular. And I think that's a video that would appeal to a lot of Culture Binge fans, kind of taps into that side of what we do. If I might ask, how did you come up with that? What made you want to research and write about men's wellness?
It was from a place of bitterness, actually. And I feel like I told you that, so you knew that.
Wow, Robyn, this is what we do on the podcast. We ask questions that we know the answers to elicit the things that people want to hear, okay? This isn't reality. This is all performance. None of this is real. So again, tell us why you decided to write about men's wellness.
Well, I had a really bad breakup based on the fact that the guy really liked Joe Rogan, and I thought, how can I monetize this hatred that I have? And then the idea was born.
Beautiful.
Wow. We love talking breakup, fallouts, relationship issues, all those things on here. And I'm not even kidding, We're known to have little digressions about these things. So
yeah,
I like anything that comes out of spite. In the most recent season of Curb Your Enthusiasm, Larry starts a spite store where he gets mad at a local coffee shop owner, so starts his own coffee shop out of spite to ruin him. So I think we just all can encourage spite, but that's cool if being mad at someone after a breakup leads to writing something very cool that people really liked a lot. And I think very effectively got at this idea that so much of the culture that underlies men's wellness is so much weirder than it needs to be and taps into so many weird things when it could just be like, yeah, being healthy is good. Here's some ways to do that.
Yeah, I think people don't realize how much it overlaps with women's wellness and the whole goopiness of it. Be your true self by taking this vitamin that makes your balls bigger.
Who doesn't like big balls?
Love them. I cut holes in the bottom of the chairs I sit in. Never mind.
That's hilarious. That's not even true.
Well, it's definitely not. That's disgusting. Wait, Surbhi, do you dabble in wellness culture and things like that?
No, I mean, other than I look at goop as obviously a holy text.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, no. Exactly. Yeah. I have my jade vag egg is all that, that's as much as wellness as I'm into.
Yeah. I'm waiting for them to make a jade urethra bead so that men can participate as well. I'm very offended that they don't have options that go both ways there. But wellness culture, if you haven't watched the men's wellness video on Wisecrack. If you're listening to this podcast, I can confidently say you'll like it. So go check that out. And thank you for being here, Robyn. You're staying up late for us. You're in the UK. So we really appreciate it.
6. I'm not usually in bed.
Oh, really? Oh, we'd heard that you were on the sleeping habits of a 93-year-old clinging for life. Sorry, that was grim.
It's a mistake to make with the, aesthetic that I have. I do look quite similar to the typical 90-year-old.
Yes, exactly. If you are watching this one on video, you know that was silly because she does not look like a typical 90-year-old. Unless your 90-year-old Gran is like cool and it has a little bit of a punk edge. But so no better way to get into this, Robyn, than the most controversial thing we do on this show, the thing that I almost got killed for suggesting that we ever stop doing. It's a little thing called Slaps and Chaps, where we talk about something that we are really liking that's going on in culture right now and something that maybe sucks. Not even just culture. Sometimes we talk about things in our life. So Surbhi, as always, I'll let you get started. What's your slap and what's your chat for this week?
Okay, so my
ready
slap.
to go.
I know, I'm so ready.
Sorry,
for this.
You were just so ready, and I got so excited.
So my slap is that I'm so much happier these days.
Yeah.
So longtime listeners will remember that I had a horrible breakup last year, and I am so much happier now, mostly because I realized that my ex is kind of a piece of shit. And it kind of sucks that it took a year and a half for me to realize that. But hey, it's always easier to move on when you realize that someone's an asshole. And so I realized that, and I'm doing so much better. I am way happier. It's amazing. It happened within the last couple of weeks, and it's incredible that it was like a light went off, and I was like,
amazing.
Amazing. I feel so much better. Yeah. And then the Chaps is related to your topic, Michael, a little bit about Ted Lasso. So I don't want to get into it too much. I will discuss it when we're
not going to spoil. When we talk about it, we'll make sure we don't spoil for anyone who hasn't watched these shows yet. We'll be good. We promise.
Yes. It won't be, no storylines will be discussed. Nothing about character arcs, nothing. So, it's about that, but I'll get into that a little bit later.
Oh, okay, cool. And let me ask you this, just for anyone who's listening who has maybe empathized with your breakup journey. We've talked about it here before. Do you think was it a particular thing that happened that gave you that breakthrough? Or is it just a matter of time and just giving yourself time to not to be corny, but to sort of heal and think and, and I say this because I think sometimes people who are going through this type of thing might be like, what's the magic trick? And sometimes people maybe are afraid of the idea that it is just time and you got to kind of ride some of the stuff out. So you don't have to get too personal, but I'm just curious.
So a lot of it is time. And I think you should always give yourself permission to take as long as you need. For some people, they thought a year and a half was so long for me to still be mourning the end of this relationship. But for me, it was exactly what I needed. It was an executive coach that I spoke about on the last episode. Yeah. She mentioned a few things and that helped me a lot, just new perspective. And the third thing was just, as I looked back at the relationship with wiser eyes, I had finally moved to a place where I realized that the relationship wasn't as great as I thought it was. And then also, the fact that he's dating his ex again. The girl he dated before me, and the fact that she was such a huge bitch to him, that sort of helps me realize oh, wow, I strive to meet someone better than you because I thought you were the best. So, it's always easier to move on when you're mad and kind of disgusted with someone than it is to move on when you're heartbroken.
Yeah. So once again, spite and hatred will heal all wounds.
Exactly.
And time, I guess.
Yeah,
well, that's great.
Totally.
And thank you for being so vulnerable with us, Surbhi. We appreciate it. Robyn, how about you for your inaugural Slaps and Chaps? What do you got for us?
Well, it's just going to have to be to do with my life because I'm too consumed with my life to have hot pop culture takes, which is really sad. So my slaps will be that I got a promotion, which is really cool.
Congratulations!
We love it.
Hell yeah!
Love promotions.
But then at the same time, my chaps is that I got a promotion and now I'm really stressed.
You have to do stuff, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I work in escape room. I love escape rooms. It's so fun. But I didn't realize how stressful it is taking calls and organizing everyone's shifts, and like running the whole business is not as fun as just chucking people in a room and leaving them for an hour and then going, oh my God, well done. Or, you'll do better next time.
So, I'm really passionate about business and especially women in business. So if I can offer some unsolicited advice, which I love doing because I fucking love telling people what to do. Set good boundaries. Don't be afraid to delegate. And just make sure you like try to work on prioritizing like what needs to be done right now. What are your long-term projects, your short-term projects, and then just work on that, like prioritizing. And when things start to get overwhelming, it's totally fine for you to just be like, well, this is fucking shit, and take a break. But you got this. You're amazing. You can totally do it. You are incredible and you're capable of anything. So I'm really happy for you.
I mean,
that's so nice. It's like the first time that you've met me and you already know that I'm amazing and I can do it. So
I know. I can feel it through the screen, like how amazing you are. That's how I know you can do this.
yeah, Surbhi says this the first time you meet her, and then like 3 times in, she'll be like, actually, Robyn, I think you maybe aren't as capable as I once thought. So lower expectations. I kid. That's great. Although it is, I like that the double-edged sword of the promotion, Robyn, is like, good to get promoted, good to get more money. Sucks to do more stuff. I've had so many conversations with friends recently, some of whom are even like wanting to not get promotions or being in awkward positions where they get offered something and they're like, nah, I'm good. And their employer is like, what do you mean you're good? And they're like, I'm comfortable with how much I make. And I of course, don't want to do more work and spend more hours. So this is a weird one. It's a weird one. You know, why can't you just get promoted for doing equal or lesser amounts of work? That would make sense to me.
And I think a lot of the stress of the promotion that I got is because of like imposter syndrome, and because I'm like 24, and people like when old people want to complain about something to the manager, being like I'm the manager, it's scary at the same time as being powerful.
Yeah. Wow.
Imposter syndrome is hard to deal with, but I think it comes down to reframing and realizing that you were put in this position for a reason. Like people believed in you. And even if you can't believe in yourself, like know that somebody trusted their business to you.
Surbhi, how are you not an executive coach? Listen to you go today.
I would love to be an executive coach. I would love to do that.
Okay, well, this is you can put this on your like I don't know if you do like reels or anything for that, but save these clips. I'll really quickly do my slaps and chaps before we get into the topics. I'll say my slap is I really enjoyed. I'm very excited about the new novel coming out from the Irish author Sally Rooney, and there was a feature on her in The Guardian that I just liked a lot. I find her to be such an interesting writer, someone who kind of doesn't really give a shit about the world of like literary fame and coming off as a social media darling or anything. And she also gave this explanation in this interview of like class breakdowns in the Marxist tradition that was so good and just so great that we have this wonderful author who can just casually be like, well, technically here's what class means. So I don't know, I'm excited about that. And if you haven't read Sally Rooney, maybe people have seen Normal People on Hulu. But you should read her book. She's really good. And I'm just excited for the backlash too. And this leads into maybe our talk about criticism, because she will have now likely have written 3 really good novels by the age of 30. And there's nothing that aspiring writers hate more than successful people younger than them, and especially successful women younger than them. So I'm so excited for the backlash. Not excited that people will like say mean stuff about Sally Rooney, but I think she's good. And is not on social media and just hangs out with her math teacher husband in Ireland and probably has a lovely life walking around bogs and stuff. So I'm excited about that. Good interview in The Guardian if you haven't read it. My chap, I'll just say really quickly, I'm potentially going to purchase a car, and I haven't had a car in like a decade, and everything about it makes me mad. I hate the necessity of car ownership. I feel like if you live in a major city on the planet in 2021, it shouldn't be a necessity. We should just have good public transportation systems. And it annoys me that many cities don't have good public transportation systems because oil and gas and auto companies lobbied cities to like pull up public transit. It sucks so bad and I hate it. And also I just hate anything you buy where you have to go into it with like, how do you haggle and talk to the person and they say this price. I just hate it. I would just rather live in a really aggressive, controlled communist economy where the government sets the price. There's no haggling, and at least you know. I just hate it so much. I hate playing games. It feels like dating when you're a teenager. I don't want buying a car to feel like that, you know? So
do you have a Costco membership?
I do not have a Costco membership. I think my partner does though.
Okay.
Do they sell cars?
They have discounts and stuff. Like look into Costco Auto or something like that. And you can buy your car through there. And there's like a super low price. You don't have to haggle. You don't have to do anything like that. But call a couple of different dealerships to make sure. But I'm pretty sure like when I bought my car, I found out about this afterwards. And so but this was like a few years ago. But anyway, just check into Costco. The other thing is you can do everything over email. There's a really great article on that.
On the toast?
I think so. Yeah.
Yes,
where like
I saw this. Someone sent me this about how you can haggle for car prices over the email. I did like that. So thanks for that. Surbhi's just like coming with advice on everything today. This rules. If you see Surbhi on the street today, be like, I need advice. That's great. I'll update everyone. If I end up getting a car, we'll do an episode where I just stream while driving around and I'll probably get in an accident. It'll be really sad, but it'll be worth it for the podcast. So let's get into topics. So something I wanted to talk about, I'll say that this is motivated by two specific instances of recent kind of controversy and TV criticism, but I'm interested in what we think of criticism as a whole. So I think like regardless of whether people have seen the shows I'm going to reference, these shows are only the occasion to talk about what criticism is or what it should be. Now, the two examples, and if you are on social media, you have seen these discussions in the past couple weeks. First thing, people getting really mad about Ted Lasso, the show about the heart of gold American football coach who ends up in England coaching a English-style football team. The first season is one of the popular shows of the past year, blew up on Apple Plus, nominated for 20 Emmys, setting records all around. And one of the reasons people liked it is because Jason Sudeikis' lead character, Ted Lasso, kind of just like a good guy. And we don't have a lot of good guys on TV, especially in comedy. There's a lot of ironic detachment and us laughing at bad people. But watching Ted Lasso, and I think a lot of people watched it in the midst of the pandemic, made them feel good. And they liked it because of that. But now that people are like vaccinated and feeling a little bit better, they hate it. And people have been so mad over season 2 of this show. And the online discourse has really gone between some people who now are basically pulling the, see, I told you so, the show always sucked and you just didn't get it and here's why. And on the flip side, there's people who are just like, can't we just enjoy things, please? Why does everything have to involve a critical takedown? On the other side, I think it's been really interesting to watch the reaction to The White Lotus, a show I think I mentioned a couple episodes ago. And this is a show that was kind of universally loved during its 6-episode run. But in the weeks after it ended, all of a sudden criticism started popping up, which, in my humble opinion, shows that people didn't understand what the show was about. And some of the criticism was very literal. So, for example, one of the characters in the show, played by the wonderful, wonderful comedic actor and writer Natasha Rothwell, is a woman of color who basically, at the end of the show, gets screwed over by a white woman played by Jennifer Coolidge. Some of the response is like, how horrible, we didn't give this woman of color character more agency, et cetera, which is like, if this was the real world, then yes, that is bad. We should be critical. But in the context of the show is largely a satire about how terrible rich people can be and how out of touch with the world they are. So some of the stuff that happens in this show, it's like, it doesn't make you feel good, but the show is trying to make a point about this sort of thing. So that's just like one example. But so it's been interesting to see how, I guess, with Ted Lasso, people are mad that some fans took the show very literally and have this like real life relationship with the Jason Sudeikis character. But then with White Lotus, some of the weird criticism now is precisely because people are taking it too literally and acting as if the show, which is a satire, should be giving like real life advice on how to, I guess, like end classism and racism, which I'm not sure if TV is where we should go here. And I'll read one quote. This is from an Allison Herman article. She's a TV writer at The Ringer who does really good work. And this is her writing about the Ted Lasso controversy. She says, "What's so wrong," they ask, "with a show that chooses not to challenge viewers, but instead make them feel good? Can't we just relax and enjoy a piece of entertainment? Considering what I do for a living, I'll likely never agree that anything is just a TV show, let alone a massively successful beachhead for a relatively new streaming service. But I'd also point out that the ferocity of Ted Lasso's fandom itself belies the point. People are protective of their comforts, especially in times as harrowing as the past year and change." Which I think gets at a lot of this. And the last thing I'll say before we open it up, I'm also thinking about criticism because there was a really good podcast that just finished airing last week that was called Gene and Roger about the film critics Siskel and Ebert. And it was a 8-part thing looking at their careers. And something that stood out to me listening to that is like the tension of what is the role of criticism? What's the role of popular criticism? And in particular, like what should the role of the critic be to the medium that they're criticizing? Should they write about TV even though they fucking hate TV just because they like being critical, or should that criticism come from a place of like loving that medium? So curious with this just as we get started, where are we both at with these shows? And once again, we are not going to spoil either of these shows. We're not going to ruin anything big, but if either of y'all watched either Ted Lasso or White Lotus, and you can say no and it's fine.
Well, I loaded the first 45 seconds and then someone came into work. But I did read a lot of the articles and stuff about it and had a look on Twitter at what people were complaining about. And it was really interesting. The whole premise of Ted Lasso, and I think some of the criticisms like, oh, it's just not realistic or whatever. But then it made me think of Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney and how they bought Wrexham Football Club in the UK. Do you guys know about that?
No.
Tell us, official UK correspondent.
Basically, they just bought a football team that are quite a small team in Wales, and they've just celebrated because the team won a game. So yeah, and by football I mean, you would say soccer, but it's football to me. So you're just gonna have to deal with it.
We can handle it.
So wow, they bought a team just like the actor Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, the actor Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney. Look it up. It's basically the gang buys a football club. That's what it is.
That's wild.
Have they said if they were at all inspired by Ted Lasso, they just got so into it, they were like, we want to do this too, and we have the money to do that for a fun bit?
I'm not sure. I think they're making a documentary about it, so keep an eye out.
Wow. And real quick, Surbhi, have you watched either of those shows?
I've never seen White Lotus. I love Ted Lasso. I watch it all the time. I've watched the first season over and over and over. It's so good.
Yeah.
The second season I've seen a lot. It's a little different than the first. My issue with so the first time I watched Ted Lasso, the first season, I loved every second of it. Then the more I started to watch it, the more some of the characters started to grate on my nerves. Nate, the kit boy, whatever, I think, forgot his title. And then he becomes, well, whatever. He's the kit man. So he started to bother me. His voice is so low. It's so hard to hear what he's saying. He mumbles. And I think that's part of his character, to be sort of not super confident and, demonstrate that he has anxiety or discomfort through his voice. But I can't stand it. And it's gotten worse. And even this season, I can't stand his voice. I can't stand it when he's on the screen. I forward through him on.
I want to apologize if that actor does listen to this podcast. The views of Surbhi do not represent the views of Wisecrack as a whole. And if you ever want to come on, we'd love to have you. We will not invite Surbhi that day. Keep going.
I mean, you're welcome to come on, but we'll probably have to buy several microphones so we can pick up the sound of your voice. Oh my God, that was so mean. Oh my God. Wow, she's on one today. Yes.
Went from so encouraging to just I don't like this man's voice, so I hope he dies.
Yeah. That was the roller coaster of this call. Like, it's very odd.
Well, let me ask you this to back away from you just annihilating a man's natural feature that he can't change. But so how do you feel? And this could apply to Ted Lasso or things in general. Like, what is your relationship to reading criticism about things you like, right? So if you like a show and then you see whether it's people on the internet or people that are writing for prominent like websites or newspapers, does it affect you if they either say the thing you like is really good or actually the thing you like sucks?
So I don't, if I really like something, I do like to read articles and things about other people enjoying it because I like the perspective. And sometimes like when someone is so joyful and happy about something, I like to read it because sometimes they share their own experiences or they look at it in a different way. And I like reading that sort of thing because I also feel an emotional connection to something. If it's something I really like and someone dislikes it, I don't read it mostly because I just don't care. Like, it's not like it's going to change my opinion about something. I would just rather not read something because we're just two different people and I'm not looking for someone to change my mind about something that I love.
Yeah. Robyn, what's your relationship to, in general, like criticism, whether it's TV, film, music, literature? I mean, how do you feel about balancing your relationship to a work of art you like and maybe seeing people go a little bit hard at that thing?
I kind of like a bit of cheeky criticism. I think it depends what it's about. So like if it's about a massive show that has like thousands and thousands of fans and everyone agrees that it's pretty good and someone's like, actually, that wasn't that good, I'm like, yeah, you take them down. But if it's a show that people are like on the fence about, I just get really defensive and I'm like, don't touch my show. Leave it alone. It's kind of like there are a lot of really valid criticisms of loads of the media that I like. Like I'm a big Rick and Morty fan, but there's loads of things that you could say about that show that aren't necessarily like great. And a lot of the fans kind of potentially are not like as great as they think they are.
Yeah, I, as the host of a Rick and Morty podcast, I regularly get emails from Rick and Morty fans letting me know that I shouldn't exist. So yeah, there's some problems in the fandom.
Yeah, so they're it can be quite vicious in the fandoms of these shows. And sometimes when I see criticisms of them, I'm like, yeah, you take those guys down. You take them down. But with shows like Tuca and Bertie, which not a lot of people actually watch, a lot of the criticisms are kind of I feel like a lot of them aren't valid. They're from people who watched BoJack Horseman and thought like, oh, this is going to be exactly the same. And then find out that Tuca and Bertie is a totally different show that's just as good, but about like female trauma and like womanhood and stuff like that. And then they get angry. I hate that. That's like one of the worst things that I can read in terms of criticism.
Yeah. I mean, something I've been thinking about with all this, I mean, in one sense, I think I fall on maybe a less healthy range than you both in terms of how I deal with criticism of things I like. I think historically I've been way too sensitive in my life. And I grew up as like a weird kid that often found like solace and companionship in the art I was consuming. So if people were like, this band or this movie sucks, for me as a child, it felt like your friends suck. The thing that's meaningful to you sucks. The thing that makes you feel like you have value. Thank you so much. This is a brutal day. We went from an optimistic, encouraging podcast to just like making me feel bad, but it's fine. That's what we do. But I've struggled with that as I've gotten like older because I think sometimes it is that hard. I think I do relate to that impulse of why can't people just enjoy things? If this makes someone feel good, especially when the world sucks, who cares, right? But thinking on it more, I think for me, like the sweet spot of criticism, and Alison Herman gets at this in her piece a little bit, is a good criticism, in my humble opinion, criticizes a thing on its own terms. So a critic is able to look at a film, a television show, an album, and ask, what is this thing trying to do on its own terms? And evaluates it like that. I was thinking earlier, like, you know, if a music critic is going to talk about an avant-garde jazz record, they shouldn't evaluate it in terms of, oh, it doesn't have catchy pop hooks, because it's not trying to do that. In the same way, if the music critic is reviewing the new Olivia Rodrigo record, They shouldn't be like, there's no discordant improvisations in this thing, because that's not what she's trying to do. She's trying to write like catchy pop songs. And I don't know, I worry sometimes in TV and film, you know, whether it's people wanting to review a superhero movie as if it's like a French New Wave film, or a feel-good sitcom as if it's like The Sopranos or something. Part of me thinks that some of this problem comes from people just not evaluating things on the basis of what they're trying to be, if that makes sense.
So that's a really interesting take. I sometimes just want to, like, does anybody else just want to take it for what it is and not think too deeply? And like, I don't want to be like a critic when I'm watching something. I just want to just watch something and just enjoy it. And if I don't enjoy it, that's fine. And just feel like I didn't like that. I'm not going to continue watching it. Like I feel like there's like this pressure now where everything has to be discussed. And I know we're on a podcast where we discuss everything, but like, if I say like I don't like a TV show in my personal life, I'll have friends that are like, well, what didn't you like about it? Like was it a specific character, or like was it a storyline? And I'm like, no, it just wasn't for me. Like, not everything has to be dissected. Not everything has to have like a good reason. I just didn't fucking like it. Like,
that's an interesting thing you say, right? Because do you think there's a difference like between you like a show and a friend says, oh, like that wasn't for me, but that's cool, or the friend says, you like that show's idiotic? And I feel like a lot of the latter happens, and especially on like the Twitter discourse, it's rarely, oh, you know, Ted Lasso didn't really work for me. It's like, there was an article, I forget the name of the writer, in Gawker that was just like, Ted Lasso's not funny. And the tone of the whole thing was like, this show isn't funny. If you think it's funny, you're stupid, because it's objectively not funny. Yeah. And that shit I do kind of hate.
Right, because it's so superior. Like, what makes you think that like you're the judge and you're the final say on like what's funny or what people should enjoy? And when people tell me they like certain things and I just didn't care for them at all, like my response is always, oh, what did you like about it? Because maybe it might change my perspective. I might look at it differently. Or I'll be like, that's really great. Like, I'm glad that you really love that show and that like show brought you joy. That's great. I would never think like, oh my God, unless the show was like super creepy and weird, and I would be like, oh,
we don't like creepy and weird.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. Robyn, how does stuff make you feel if you like a thing a lot and someone says, oh, you like that? That thing sucks.
I'd like to say that it doesn't impact me, but it does quite a lot. One time I was in the car with my ex-boyfriend, and he was complaining about all the music I was playing.
Mm-hmm. He's an asshole. Mm-hmm.
Ouch. I will never play music again in this car. Mm-hmm. It's not like I wrote the music, but like...
That would be much worse if you were like, here's a song I wrote.
Wrote a song about Joe Rogan. But yeah, I do take it personally sometimes, like, but I think it depends on the vitriol of the person saying it. Because you could be like, nah, didn't really like it. Or you could be like you were saying, like, that sucks. That's the worst thing I've ever seen. If you like that, I hate you. I wish you were dead. And there's sometimes it's hard to tell which one of those someone is going for. And then obviously when it's coming from a friend, like, it kind of hurts a bit more because you're like, I thought you got me, but you don't like the shows I see myself in.
Yeah, that's such a good point, because we do that. We see ourselves in the things we consume. So when people reject those things, that's like they're rejecting a part of us. I mean, sometimes I think the rejection can come from bitterness. Like, for example, in the show I Think You Should Leave, which is a very funny show on Netflix. So we did a video about it recently on Wisecrack. That's one where I've had some friends who like are like, I just don't get this. I don't think this is funny. I'm kind of like, a lot of people think it's funny. It's pretty well agreed upon that this is funny. As someone who's very into comedy, I think this is very funny. But I feel like there's like, especially with comedy, there can be this bitterness that's like, I don't find this funny. Thus, I'm annoyed that everyone else is telling me it's so funny. Thus, this actually sucks. Leave me alone.
So I'm one of those people that if everybody finds something funny, sometimes I don't understand it, but I know that that's something that is about me. Like, I often don't understand things. Or like my sense of humor is just not not what other people think is funny. So for me, it's like, oh, and there's almost pressure that I feel because I'm like, oh, everybody thinks it's funny. Like, why don't I think it's funny? Like, why don't I understand the humor? And I've felt more comfortable as I've gotten older to just be like, yeah, I don't know. There's just something like a chip missing. I just don't get it. Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
But yeah, and I guess to like at least touch on it, because I know I brought it up before with like the White Lotus thing. The thing that strikes me about that show is I think it's very clearly a satire. And I think something I've noticed in the discourse recently is people don't know what satire is anymore, and they don't know how to evaluate it. I think people think that what satire is like someone decides they hate a group of people and they write a thing that roasts those people and puts moral condemnation on those people, right? Whereas good satire is often, I mean, I guess like one of the most popular recent satires is like Veep, or, you know, based on like In the Loop from the UK, which are shows that like, I don't know, they're satirical because they center themselves in the stories of these people. They let us see their psychology. And if anything, they like let them be the moral logic of the thing. So as viewers, we're able to see how those people simply being themselves starts to deconstruct something. And I think with The White Lotus, people have been, I think, unfairly judging the show's creator, Mike White, because the show doesn't do what they want it to do. And in a sense, it lets the bad people win. And I would say because it's satire, that's the whole point, that under the system we currently live in the world, bad people normally win. The selfish, the vapid, and the well-connected are normally going to do better than, you know, indigenous people working in an exploitative job on a colonized island. Like, it's not going to work out for you well in that position. Not because the showrunner is saying like, I hate Native Hawaiians, because they're simply saying this is how things often go. And it should make you feel weird because that's what satire is supposed to do. This is me being a little bit soapboxy, but I do think it's an example of like, if a show is supposed to be a kind of dark satire, evaluate it as a dark satire. If a show is supposed to be a witty political comedy, do that. And some shows like Ted Lasso, I think, are literally just trying to be like comfort television. And I think there's a reason we like comfort television right now. And this is similar to like the need for satire, because the world sucks in a lot of ways. And maybe because the world sucks a lot and many of us go work 8, 9, 10 hours at a job we don't like, when you get home, maybe the last thing you want is a television show that reminds you how bad the world sucks. I don't know.
True.
Yeah.
Very true.
We should move on, but we're curious to hear what everyone thinks about this. So we'll tell you how to email us and call us later. We want you to do that. Surbhi, you're going to talk about something, another thing near and dear to my heart, higher education. Always down for some higher education news and stuff. How people are learning, how things are changing. So tell us about what has been going on with higher education in relation to remote learning.
Yes. So school is back in session, or is about to be back in session for many places. And as most of us know, everything was remote last year, remote learning, remote working. And an interesting thing is that while many students complained about remote working or remote learning last year because they felt like they were paying all of this money and they weren't able to make use of the school, or they didn't receive the same sort of education that they could have if they were in person, there is a group of students who thrived with remote learning. And these are students who have disabilities. And now that many people are vaccinated and schools are back in session in person, this group would like to continue remote accommodations because they feel like for the first time, they're able to have the same access to education as others. And, oh, I got distracted. Sorry. So in the US, universities are required to provide reasonable accommodations or modifications for students with disabilities. So in the past, this has been something like when I was in school, it was if you like broke your arm or something, or you couldn't type, they would have students that would come to your class with you and like take notes on your behalf. Or maybe it was you get a longer time to take your exam, or, if you had, I went to a school with a lot of historic buildings and they didn't have elevators. And there was a student who had a disability and she was in a wheelchair. So we moved our classrooms to newer buildings with elevators. So the one thing that a lot of schools didn't do was do remote learning. So now that remote learning, every school is equipped to do it. Now that remote learning is like a big thing, students are asking universities to continue that even as the fall session resumes. And it's not just students that like remote learning, it's also professors. Many professors have disabilities and they would like to continue remote learning as well. So there are reports of schools that are continuing to offer remote learning opportunities. Like they'll record the sessions. They'll allow some professors to have remote classes and things. But what I thought was interesting is that I was talking to some of my cousins who are in university right now, and many of them said that they, depending on the subject, they found that they learned better at home or in their dorm rooms or at the library or whatever than they did in person. And it was because the subject could have been super complicated that they felt like they were able to focus more in a remote learning environment. Others said that they had trouble getting to a classroom. For example, if the classes were on opposite sides of the campus, they felt like they were running like between classes. And so it's interesting to me that remote learning might be here to stay, and I'm excited about it because, before I get into my experiences with remote learning, I'd love to know what you two think about it.
I mean, I could be cranky guy real quick, and I'll recently someone wrote an email about one of our other podcasts and said there wasn't enough conflict, similar to people criticizing Ted Lasso. So, I mean, I have like very complicated thoughts on this. As someone that used to be a lecturer / professor, depending on what side of the pond you're on, at least in my experience as an educator at the university level, and this relates a lot to the subject I taught, which is philosophy, I found that the best way to learn, communicate ideas and all that is by sitting around and talking. And obviously, like, philosophy is a subject that started with like old dudes in robes in Athens walking around and talking. But in my experiences trying to teach that remotely, I felt like something really essential was lost. And it was really hard to replicate that. Now that's, from that side of things. Now, many subjects I completely get why that would work. And also, all that said is, like, I think it's great to provide as much accommodation as possible so anyone can learn regardless of whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I think I haven't had experiences as a remote learner, but as a remote teacher, and I have not loved it.
Interesting. Robyn, how have you felt about remote learning? Have you done any remote learning?
Yeah, so I finished my master's degree last October, so we were
Congrats.
still we were in uni pretty much up until I guess the week before lockdown, which in England was around the 24th of March, and then suddenly everything was online, and it was really strange, but it did kind of highlight there's a lot of my degree. So my second degree was journalism. There is a lot of it you can just do from home. There's no need to go to someone's house with a camera when you can just ring them up or send them a message on Twitter. And it was really good for people who had anxiety and stuff, because sitting in a room with someone and having to ask them questions is kind of scary. So my remote learning experience it was pretty good. And then while I was there, they put in a sort of requirement that professors record all of their lectures, so people who couldn't attend could see it. And that was kind of a big thing for students with disabilities and stuff who weren't able to be in the classroom, weren't able to attend for whatever reason. And I think remote learning has highlighted that it's not especially if it's just a lecture where you're explaining things, it's not necessarily super important to all be in the same room while someone's showing you how the liver works, because you can watch it on a screen and then read about it yourself.
Mm-hmm. That's yeah. So I had a similar experience. So I was in school pre-pandemic, and I took online classes, both in when I was in university, but then also for my master's degree. And I really loved it. Like, I just really felt like I learned a lot better. I enjoyed being able to learn on my own time, because some of the classes were, or some of the lectures were pre-recorded, others were live. And I liked it. I felt like it was less stressful for me to have to drive to the school, like get there, sit in a classroom. And sometimes I would pick things up faster than my classmates. And I felt like it was hard to sit still because I wanted things to move faster. And sometimes I picked things up a lot slower than my classmates, and I wanted things to slow down. So I felt like remote learning really caters to your unique learning style. And as for the professors, I had a professor when I was in university who was I'm going to make a mistake with this, so I apologize in advance for my lack of knowledge on this. I think he was a quadriplegic, and he had difficulty with mobility. And so I think that remote learning for him would have been amazing. And I'm very curious whether he liked it, like, during the pandemic. So I feel like it would be weird to just like email him out of the blue and be like, hey, I know it's been ages, but just curious how you felt about it. That I think that there are nice ways to just be inclusive and to encourage everyone to have fair access to education.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with that last point, that like everyone should have access. To continue to provide conflict and be the shitty person. I mean, my only worry with that is like that things swing so far where, because I think there's like a difference between, and the New York Times article that we'll link in the description that Surbhi sent to everyone, I think did a really great job of showing how for certain people, it was such a game changer for people with chronic illnesses and other disabilities. Like, this made it possible for them to learn at a faster rate or in a healthier way, in a safer way, which is rad. My worry as a cranky former educator is that college students just want to like sleep in and not do stuff will take advantage of these things. I'm going to say it, and I'll be the cranky old man. That for many people that does work, but I think there's a difference between, having a mobility issue or an immunological issue or a thing that keeps someone out of class. I think that's different than someone who's just like, I like when I can just get on my laptop in bed and go to lecture instead. I think that's a little different. And I think that almost can set a weird precedent for what education is. And I think my biggest meta fear with education is that some of the remote stuff and some of the digitization of things help engender a logic where education is the old person on the screen has the information. They input the information into my brain, and now I've purchased this commodity that is information from the person, rather than engaging in some experience where like I'm talking and thinking. The old person on the screen is thinking and talking. We're communicating, we're learning, we're engaged in this active process together. And I think that's my only hesitation with this, is that eventually, because the university system is so fucked up because they just want to like make money, and ghoulish administrators run universities now. So what I worry about is these ghouls who just want to make as much money as possible can be like, great, remote learning is awesome because it reduces our overhead. We can hire more adjuncts so we don't have to pay as much since they're remote. We can funnel more and more students into the classes, but then that can get pushed as like, University of blank offers innovative dual blah, blah, blah learning.
Hybrid learning.
Yeah, path. When it's just ghouls trying to make money. So
that's sounds like you have a problem with capitalism more than a problem with remote learning.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I've experienced the university enough to know that like you give these ghouls something that seems like a good thing, and the ghouls will use it for evil because that's what ghouls do.
I love that we're calling them ghouls.
Listen, if any of the former administrators from the University of the West of England in Bristol want to come on this podcast and have me call them ghouls, I will gladly do it. Or most universities for that fact. Just a ghoulish group of people. Sorry,
Well,
it's just I'll stop. I'm zipping
this
my mouth
was
shut.
lovely. Thank you for contributing to this discussion about remote learning. I really appreciate it. If you have any ideas, if you're listening at home, would love for you to give your feedback. I need to jump for another call, but this was so lovely. Robyn, I really liked meeting you, and you can do it. I believe in you.
Thank
Great.
you. It was so nice to meet you too.
Well, thank you so much, Surbhi. We'll catch up with you soon. Robyn and I will wrap up the podcast together. We're going to really throw her through the ringer and make her do that. So thanks as always, Surbhi. We will make sure we drop your information at the end so people can follow you on Twitter. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Bye.
Robyn, do you have any final thoughts before we go on the remote learning thing? Anything you didn't want to say, in front of Surbhi that now you can just say comfortably?
Well, she is very intimidating. So
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's lots of ghouls. But once again, I'm too personally attached to hating the ghouls. But I know a lot of people that listen to this podcast are students or have been students recently or educators. We'd love to hear what you think. So if you want to let us know, email us at culturebinge@wisecrack.co. No M there. That is culturebinge@wisecrack.co. Another thing you can do is call us. No one really calls anymore, so you don't have to call. But if anyone wants to call, you can at 213-534-8807. That is 213-534-8807. If you're international, you could just go on like Google Voice or WhatsApp or something and enter America's country code and do that as well. There's ways to call for free and cheap. So we got a lot of emails. Some of these are about a thing we talked about last time, Robyn, which was like climate change and the IPCC report. And I did just see that some people in the chat have said that since Surbhi made fun of Nate from Ted Lasso's voice, they're afraid to call because Surbhi might roast their voices. I will protect you as someone who the worst part of my life is having to hear my own voice play back at me all the time. I get it. And from the chat as well, Dude Abides is here. Thanks as always, Dude Abides. Total recall, Michael. Like it. And nothing to see here. Michael should have an OnlyFans. I don't think I would offer much. But you know what? I'll think about it. When things get bad economically, we'll do what we got to do. But shouts to everyone who still has work because OnlyFans rescinded on their really fucked up policy from last week. But whatever, that's a different thing for a different time. So we're getting some emails. Something we talked about last time, Robyn, was climate change and the IPCC report. And our kind of angle on it was, what is the relationship between personal responsibility and government-y stuff? So a few emails about this we'll look at. This is from Josh. Josh says, my name's Josh. I'm a 28-year-old organic farmer. How cool. What a great job. I studied sustainable community food systems in college. I've been farming for 6 years. I chose this career lifestyle largely because of the existential crisis that climate change presents in our day-to-day lives. I live in Hawaii, and this shit is scary. We're a small chain of islands in the middle of the ocean over 2,000 miles away from California, where most of our food is coming from. 90% of our food is imported. Climate change threatens everything, emphasis is, from our ability to rely on drought-stricken West Coast to continue supplying us food to natural disasters wiping out the infrastructure that gets us that food. A lot of this dependence is the result of large agricultural corporations displacing native Hawaiian farmers to set up their sugar plantations. Fast forward to today, agriculture is no longer profitable because labor is cheaper elsewhere and the cost of land is too high. So when people mention personal responsibility over corporate responsibility, I get really frustrated. He goes on to say, I see things like Amazon's climate pledge commercial with kids asking adults, what are you going to do about climate change? Meanwhile, Jeff Bezos is pissing away billions flying to space for fun. Sorry to rant, he says. I think Michael, that's me, is not alone when he talks about feeling indoctrinated into believing the fate of the planet is on us to solve. But yeah, Thank you for that email, Josh. And then a thing that we ask in emails a lot is people to tell us what we would be in different products. He says, I would guess Michael enjoys PBR, so Josh compares us to beers. Surbhi drinks Stella Artois. Totally true. Surbhi loves being in Europe. She would drink a Stella. Alec looks like he'd have... Oh, I know. So this is, I mean, I know this. The funniest thing to me, and for anyone who lives on either side of the pond, in America, Stella is treated like, oh, Stella, it's kind of like a classy whatever beer. As you know, in the UK, I see a dude with like a bunch of cans of Stella he just got from the Tesco's, and I'm like going the other way because he's not going to get up to anything good. It's kind of, there's an example that goes the other way too. Oh, another example of this would be Newcastle Brown Ale is considered like a nice beer in the States. And not that it's like as bad as Stella, but Newcastle is not like a fancy beer in the UK.
Honestly, I wouldn't know.
Yeah, good. Beer's horrible. It's not. I love it. But and someone said Alec looks like he'd have a Guinness, which is cool. I'm jealous. And Helen maybe a Coors. Great. Do you have any thoughts now that you're here on personal responsibility versus corporate responsibility when it comes to the issue of climate change?
I do, actually. I imagine it's pretty much the exact thing that you said last time. I actually listened to that podcast. I was on a train from Glasgow and I was there for like 5 hours. And I was like, well, I want to listen to Michael Burns. So I did it. But yeah, it frustrates me quite a lot because, nobody really fully understands the extent of like the responsibility that governments and corporations need to have to not destroy the environment. And it's always, there's a whole culture of like shame around it. Like, oh, you didn't put that in the recycling. Did you know the earth is dying? And it's like, well, yeah, but like 3 companies are placing all of the pollution in the sea. What am I supposed to do about that? And I just feel like a lot of the climate debate is, I don't know, it's very skewed towards like, oh, you're an awful person for not putting that can in the right bin, when it could be a good discussion on like, which brands do you buy from that throw things in the sea? And what is the impact of the things that they're doing? And, you know, can we trust corporations that say they have a good carbon footprint when they very much, you know, there's ways to look like you're a good company in terms of climate change that are just completely baseless and vapid, I guess. But yeah, it frustrates me. It frustrates me quite a lot.
Good. I'm glad you got to weigh in on that. No disagreements. I'll rip through a few more emails real quick. This is Jordan responding to our interview with Tom Wyman a couple weeks ago, fellow British Northerner. Jordan said, longtime listener, my 5th child was just born last night. Wow, so many kids. So I'm feeling in a fit state to dole out the pearls gleaned from years of fatherhood. So any new parents, Jordan's got some advice for you. He says this: the best thing you can do for your kids is to never hide your mistakes, but take every opportunity to take ownership and responsibility. It's a much better model of behavior and shows them in a real way what's important to life. None of us are perfect, and trying to pretend otherwise is silly. That's great advice. Not to be dark, but I grew up with parents that did not take that advice, and now I have to pay for therapy because of it. So be like Jordan and save your kids therapy money. I'm not going to be able to get to all these. Our loyal Argentinian culture correspondent, Maria, wrote us a great email about capybaras and some weird news going on with those on social media. And it involves class and politics. So I would say look this up. Thank you, Maria, so much for looking into that. We got another email from Evan about the climate change stuff. Says, I'm a physical therapy student from the Southeast United States. Basically said he's surprised that other people in his life aren't freaking out about the climate change stuff as much. So he goes on to say, how is no one talking about this? What does a Culture Binge team think about this? How can humans not put aside differences to solve the issue of climate change? It seems so obvious that this is a problem that does not discriminate between party lines, religion, or socioeconomic status, and will affect almost all people equally. If this is the tragic end of humanity, I suppose I'll pre-order my popcorn and drink now. I mean, I think that general point, we got a few emails about this that Evan's bringing up, is like this frustration of if climate stuff is really potentially going to end the world, why can't we all just like get together and not make it a political or religious whatever issue and make the world better? I'm pretty hopeless on that. What do you feel, Robyn?
It's interesting because I don't think it's necessarily true about the impact of climate change on different communities, because obviously like a lot of indigenous communities, poor communities and stuff like that are way more heavily impacted than by climate change. Like if there's a tsunami because of climate change or something like weather-wise that's horrible that happens to, an island in the middle of nowhere, people with loads of money will just leave. But the poor people are left behind to deal with the consequences of climate change. And there's a lot of situations where climate change has a bigger impact on people of color and like other marginalized communities, people on low income and stuff. And I definitely do think we should all band together to, work against it. But a lot of the issues to do with climate change are caused by the same people that they impact the least. So, billionaires, corporation owners, things like that.
Yeah. I'm going to rip through a few more of these and we'll wrap up. Phil, who works in manufacturing, wrote us an interesting email about how he's been in corporations where they've had the opportunity to do things to cut emissions drastically and they just didn't. And, he says something similar to what you just said, Robyn. In his email, it says, with respect to the personal responsibility thing, people in developed countries that produce significantly more of the average amount of greenhouse gases need to curb their footprint, but that footprint is nowhere near as large or as critical to fighting climate change as the emissions produced by corporate entities. One of the best ways for us to fight climate change is to hold companies to account, whether it's through legislation, boycotting, or general strikes. So thank you for that perspective, Phil. Another great email on climate stuff came in from Maximilian, who just also has a rad name. He recommended some good books as well, and I'll just go through some of those. He mentions This Changes Everything by Naomi Klein, Donut Economics by Kate Raworth, Overheated, How Capitalism Broke the Planet and How We Fight Back by Kate Aronoff, which I haven't read, but I really want to read. And then he wrote a really great long email, but he gave a few sort of advice points, which I think are helpful. He says, if we want to do things individually, he said, 1, stop financing the opposition. Gives a good explanation there, but that makes sense. 2, become an expert, which I think is true. The more we know, the better. And 2, become a community, whether that's joining the Sunrise Movement or another thing. So I really like Maximilian's email because it got it. There's things we can do that make us not completely hopeless. Got a few good emails as well about work benefits that we talked about last time. So thanks for everyone that sent those. Finally, we got a good email from Pat in Australia. I'll read his because he does tell us what kind of Australian birds we would be. It says Surbhi would be a kookaburra because she's witty, clever, and have a nice laugh. Michael, you'd be a magpie because also clever, but I also wouldn't be surprised if you jumped out of a tree and swooped someone. And our old friend Alec is a night parrot because he's gone missing, but we might find him again someday. So thank you so much for wrote all those emails. I wish we had more time to go through all of them because they're all so good, but we'll wrap up here. Thanks again, Robyn, for being here today. Thanks to Surbhi. Robyn, if people want to follow you on Twitter or any social media stuff, where can they do that?
They can do it at Robyn Chowdhury. It's like a hard name to spell, but eventually you'll get it right, and then you'll see all of my shit posting. Yeah,
you got your own full name. That's great. You can find Surbhi at Surbhi Patel 22. You can find me at Michael O. Burns. We'll be back in a couple weeks. Thanks again to Robyn for being here. And once again, email us at culturebinge@wisecrack.co. And then sorry if there's any audio stuff from the last little bit of my thing there. And then also, forgot to mention this, Culture Binge has a Twitter now. And it's run by producer extraordinaire Maddie, who says funny stuff on there sometimes. So pay attention to the snark. And I will say, someone on Twitter said to me, I think I retweeted something or whatever from the Culture Binge thing, and they assumed I ran it, and then I was retweeting myself. No, I didn't do that. So please follow the Culture Binge Twitter as well. That's going to help us a lot. But for Surbhi, for Robyn, I'm Michael. This has been Culture Binge. We'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.